Hello there. I'm so glad you're here. Right now, in this moment, you have absolutely nowhere to be. Nothing to fix, nothing to worry about. The day is already behind you, gently folding itself away like a soft blanket being put aside. All that remains is this quiet space we're about to share together. So go ahead and make yourself as comfortable as you possibly can. Adjust your pillow, pull up your blanket, feel the softness beneath you, supporting you completely. Take a slow breath in through your nose. Hold it for just a moment, and then let it go, long and slow, through your mouth. Feel your body becoming heavier. Feel your eyelids becoming warmer. The weight of the day is lifting, drifting away like a leaf on a gentle stream. Tonight, I want to take you somewhere special, a small rocky island at the edge of the sea, a place where the water meets the sky and where an old stone tower stands tall against the wind. This is the Northcliff Lighthouse, and tonight is a very special night. Tonight is the lighthouse keeper's last night of duty. Elias had been the keeper of the Northcliff Lighthouse for 47 years. That's more than 17,000 nights, 17,000 sunsets watched from the gallery deck. 17,000 times the great lamp had been lit by his hands, sending its beam of light sweeping across the dark water, touching the faces of sailors he would never meet, guiding fishing boats and cargo ships, and lonely sailboats safely home through the night. 47 years of service, 47 years of faithfulness, and now it was all coming to an end. Tomorrow morning, a young man named Thomas would arrive by boat at first light. Thomas was 26 years old, with eager eyes and a brand new certificate from the Maritime Academy. He was earnest and capable. Elias had trained him for 2 full weeks the month before. He had shown Thomas how to wind the clockwork mechanism that turned the great Fresnel lens, how to check the oil levels and polish the brass fittings until they gleamed like gold, how to read the barometer and listen to the wind and know from its song alone whether a storm was coming. Thomas was a quick learner. He was ready. The lighthouse would be in good hands. Tomorrow morning, a young man named Thomas would arrive by boat at first light. Thomas was 26 years old, with eager eyes and a brand new certificate from the Maritime Academy. He was earnest and capable. Elias had trained him for 2 full weeks the month before. He had shown Thomas how to wind the clockwork mechanism that turned the great Fresnel lens, how to check the oil levels and polish the brass fittings until they gleamed like gold, how to read the barometer and listen to the wind and know from its song alone whether a storm was coming. Thomas was a quick learner. He was ready. The lighthouse would be in good hands. But that was tomorrow. Tonight was still Elias's watch. Tonight, the lighthouse still belonged to him. The sun was beginning its slow descent into the sea. Elias stood on the gallery deck, the narrow iron walkway that wrapped all the way around the lamp room at the top of the tower. He leaned on the railing, the same railing he had painted himself every June for nearly half a century. The iron was cool beneath his weathered hands, rough in some spots where the salt air had worked its way through the paint. He knew every inch of this railing, every bolt and rivet. Below him, the sea stretched out in all directions, vast and endless, a moving carpet of deep blue and silver. It was unusually calm this evening, as if the ocean itself had decided to say goodbye gently. The waves rolled in with a soft, steady rhythm. Hush, hush, hush. Each wave folding into the rocks at the base of the island and then retreating, pulling back like a slow exhale. That sound had been the background music of Elias's entire adult life. He could not imagine falling asleep without it. The sky was putting on a show, soft rose and pale gold near the horizon, lavender and dusty blue higher up. A few seagulls circled lazily overhead, their calls distant and muffled. The air was cool and clean, carrying that sharp, mineral smell of the sea, the scent of salt and kelp, and something ancient and wild. Elias breathed it in deeply. He wanted to remember this exact smell, this exact feeling of the wind on his face. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, he was not an old man anymore. He was 23 years old, standing on this very deck for the very first time, fresh out of his apprenticeship, nervous, unsure if he could handle the solitude. The weight of the responsibility had felt enormous back then, pressing down on his young shoulders like a physical thing. He remembered how his hands had trembled the first time he lit the lamp, how he had checked the mechanism 17 times that first night because he was terrified it would fail, how he had barely slept, listening to every creak and groan of the old tower. But the lighthouse had taught him, slowly, patiently, day by day and night by night. It taught him to trust himself, to find comfort in routine, to see the beauty in solitude. And eventually, it brought him Margaret. Margaret. Every sunset, Margaret. She had passed on 6 years ago now, but Elias still felt her presence everywhere in the lighthouse. She was woven into the very fabric of the place. In the faded armchair by the stove where she used to sit and knit, the knitting needles clicking softly in time with the turning of the lamp mechanism. In the small vase on the kitchen windowsill that she always kept filled with wildflowers in the summer, even though wildflowers were hard to find on a rocky island. In the way the teacup with the tiny blue flower pattern still sat on the shelf, waiting for her hand to wrap around it. Margaret had loved the lighthouse as much as he did, perhaps even more. She understood its purpose in a way that went beyond mechanics and duty. She used to say to him, on quiet nights when they stood together on this very deck, her hand in his, her head resting on his shoulder, "Elias, do you know what we really do here? We are not just keeping a lamp lit. We are not just maintaining a piece of machinery. Every time that beam sweeps across the water, we are saying to every sailor out there, to every fisherman far from home, to every lonely traveler on the sea, someone is watching over you. Someone cares. You are not alone in the dark." He could still hear her voice so clearly, soft and low, with that slight lilt at the end of her sentences. He could still feel the warmth of her hand in his, the gentle pressure of her fingers. He opened his eyes and looked at the golden light spreading across the water. The light had always seemed just a little warmer when Margaret was beside him. She had been the one who made the lighthouse a home. Before her, it had been a functional space, sparse and practical. She was the one who brought the hand-knitted blankets and the embroidered cushion covers. She hung curtains on the tiny windows. She planted herbs in small pots that somehow survived the salty air. She turned their cold stone quarters into a place of warmth and comfort and love. And she had been the one who started the tradition of leaving little notes. Every year on his birthday, Elias would find a small folded piece of paper tucked somewhere unexpected. On the 19th stair of the spiral staircase, in the pocket of his wool coat, slipped between the pages of the logbook. None of them ever said anything elaborate, just little things. "I see how hard you work. You are my favorite person in the whole world." The light is brighter because of you." He had saved every single one of them. They were in a small wooden box beneath his bed, tied together with a piece of faded blue ribbon. The sun had dipped lower now. The gold was deepening into orange and crimson, and the first hints of soft indigo were spreading from the east. The seagulls had gone quiet, settling into their nests on the cliffs. It was time to light the lamp. Elias turned away from the railing and walked inside. He began the climb up the spiral staircase. This staircase was the spine of the lighthouse, 87 steps of worn stone and iron, winding up through the heart of the tower. His footsteps echoed gently against the curved walls. Tap, tap, tap. A sound so familiar, it was almost like a heartbeat. Each stair was an old friend. He knew them all personally. The third one from the bottom had a small groove worn into it from decades of footsteps. The seventh one creaked in a particular way when you stepped on its left side. The 12th had a small chip in the corner from the time he dropped his toolbox during a winter storm in the winter of 1982. He had been rushing, his hands numb with cold, and the heavy toolbox had slipped right out of his grip. The chip was still there, a small imperfection that he had grown to love. And the 19th stair. That was the special one. That was Margaret's stair. Every birthday, he would find her note tucked under the edge. He still touched the stone every time he passed it. Just a brief brush of his fingertips against the cold surface. A silent hello to her memory. When he reached the top, he stepped into the lamp room. It was a circular chamber, surrounded by tall glass windows on all sides. The walls were lined with brass fixtures, polished to a mirror shine. And in the center, dominating the space like a sleeping crystal giant, was the great Fresnel lens. The lens was a masterpiece, an intricate crown of glass prisms and brass rings, standing taller than a man, designed to catch the light from a single oil flame and magnify it into a beam that could be seen for 20 miles across the open ocean. During the day, it sat quietly, a sculpture of pure craftsmanship. But at night, when the flame was lit within it, it came alive like something enchanted. It rotated slowly on its mechanism, and the light swept out across the water in a steady, dependable rhythm. Sweep, pause, sweep, pause, the heartbeat of the coast. Elias began his evening ritual, a ritual he had performed so many thousands of times that his body knew it better than his mind. It was almost a form of meditation. First, the oil. He walked to the brass containers lined up along the curved wall, each one filled with lamp oil and sealed tight. He chose one and carried it to the lamp. He unscrewed the cap and tilted the container carefully, filling the reservoir. The oil was thick and clear, with a sweet, earthy smell that filled the room. It was the smell of the lighthouse, the smell of 47 years of faithful nights. He did not spill a single drop. His hands, though old and somewhat stiff now, were still steady when it mattered. Next, the clockwork mechanism. This was the part that made the lens turn. A system of gears and weights and pulleys, all connected to a large crank on the wall. Elias grasped the crank with both hands and began to turn it. Slowly, steadily. 1 rotation, 2, 3. The gears began to hum, a low mechanical sound that vibrated through the floor and up into his bones. He counted under his breath as he always did. It took exactly 120 turns to fully wind the mechanism. 120. No more, no less. 107, 108, 109. The muscles in his arms ached slightly by the end, but it was a good ache, the ache of purpose. Then the polishing. He took a soft cloth, worn thin from use, and gently wiped each glass panel of the lens. He worked slowly, methodically. Every prism got his full attention. Every curve of glass was carefully cleaned. This was not just maintenance. This was an act of love, a silent devotion. He imagined the light passing through this glass later, traveling out into the darkness, reaching the eyes of some tired sailor far from home. Every speck of dust removed was a small blessing for their safety, a whispered wish for them to return to their loved ones. Finally, as the last colors faded from the sky and the world outside the tall windows turned to deep velvet blackness, Elias lit the lamp. He struck the match and held it to the wick. There was a soft whoosh as the flame caught, a warm orange glow that grew steady and strong. The light filled the lens, caught in every prism, reflected and refracted 1,000 times. And then the mechanism engaged, and the great crystal crown began to turn, slowly, majestically. A beam of pure, brilliant light shot out through the glass windows and swept across the sea. Sweep, pause. Sweep, pause. The rhythm of the light, the heartbeat of the coast. Elias stood very still and watched it for a long moment. He had seen this exact thing happen more than 17,000 times now, and he had never ever grown tired of it. The magic was always fresh. The wonder was always new. He supposed that was the gift of loving what you do. The lamp was lit. The work was done. Now came the quiet hours of simply waiting and watching. Elias descended the staircase and made his way to the living quarters. It was a small round room at the base of the tower, cozy and cluttered with a lifetime of memories. Bookshelves stuffed with weathered paperbacks, nautical charts pinned to the walls, their edges yellowed and curled. A small galley kitchen with a kettle and a cast iron stove. Margaret's teacup on the shelf. The old armchair by the window, its fabric worn smooth, facing out toward the endless sea. He put the kettle on and made himself a cup of tea. Chamomile from the very last tin that Margaret had bought. He had been rationing it carefully, making it last. The scent of chamomile rose up with the steam, sweet and floral, and instantly calming. The exact same smell that used to fill this little room when she was still here. He settled into his armchair by the window, with the teacup warming his hands. Outside, the beam from the lamp swept by every few seconds, a gentle pulse of light against the dark water. Inside, a small fire crackled softly in the stove, the flames dancing behind the glass door. The world was reduced to these simple, perfect things: warmth, light, tea, the sound of the sea. This was his favorite part of the night, the part where he could simply be. No tasks to complete, no logs to write, just an old man in an old chair, wrapped in the glow of a faithful lamp. His mind began to drift, floating lazily like a piece of driftwood on a calm current. He thought about the countless ships he had guided over the years, their names long forgotten, their crews faceless. Fishing boats heading out before dawn, their men bundled in thick wool coats, heading toward the rich fishing grounds. Massive cargo ships, their lights twinkling like small floating cities, on the distant horizon, lonely sailboats with their white sails glowing faintly in the moonlight, their captains navigating by the stars, all of them passing safely because of this lighthouse, because of this light. The thought filled him with a quiet, satisfying peace. He thought about the storms. There had been some terrible ones over the years. Nights when the wind screamed around the tower like a wild animal trying to get in. Nights when the waves crashed against the rocks with such fury that the whole tower shook and the vibration traveled up through the stone and into his very teeth. Nights when the rain lashed the windows so hard he could barely see the lamp. On those nights, there was no sleep. He stayed in the lamp room hour after hour, watching, waiting, making sure that in the heart of the chaos, one thing remained constant. One thing remained steady: the light. And he thought about the quiet nights like this one, which were far more numerous. Nights so still you could hear a whale exhale miles away. Nights when the sea was a perfect mirror for the moon, and the light from the tower cut across it like a golden blade on glass. Nights when Margaret came and sat with him, pulling up a small stool, resting her head on his knee, neither of them needing to speak. The silence between them was comfortable and full. He must have drifted off to sleep at some point. The next thing he knew, the fire had burned down to glowing embers, soft orange and white, and the sky outside the window was beginning to show the faintest hint of gray. The first light of dawn, the edge of the night giving way to the new day. It was time for his last task. Elias rose slowly from his chair, his joints stiff and aching. He climbed the spiral staircase one final time. His footsteps echoed in the stone tower for the last time. Tap, tap, tap. He touched the 19th stair as he passed. Goodbye. In the lamp room, the Fresnel lens was still turning. The lamp was still burning. He stood before it and watched through the tall windows as the sunrise began to paint the world. First, a pale gray light that softened the edges of the darkness. Then pink, spreading like watercolor across the horizon. Then orange and brilliant gold, the sun itself breaking free from the surface of the sea, spilling its warmth across the water in a shimmering path. For a few brief moments, the light of the lamp and the light of the sun existed together, one made by human hands, faithful and steady. One ancient and eternal, the source of all warmth and life. They overlapped and mingled, and it was beautiful. And then, Elias did what he had come to do. He extinguished the lamp. The flame went out with a soft whisper. The great lens slowed and stopped. The lamp room was silent, filled now only with the warm golden light of the morning sun streaming through the windows. There was no ceremony, no sadness, not really. The sadness had been worked through long ago in the weeks leading up to this moment. What remained now was something deeper, something quieter, a profound and peaceful sense of completion. He had done his job. He had kept the light burning through storm and calm, through loneliness and love, through all the seasons of a long and meaningful life. He had been faithful. Elias walked out onto the gallery deck one final time. The morning air was fresh and clean and full of promise. The sea was calm, glittering in the new sunlight. A few seagulls had begun their morning patrol, wheeling overhead. And far out on the water, a small dot was approaching, getting closer with every passing minute. Thomas's boat, right on time. Elias put his hands on the cool iron railing. He looked out at the sea one last time, and he smiled. "Thank you," he whispered. He was thanking the lighthouse. He was thanking the sea. He was thanking Margaret and every ship that had ever passed safely in the beam of his faithful light. But most of all, he was thanking the life he had been given. A quiet life, a simple life, a life of purpose and devotion. And that is the story of the lighthouse keepers last night. And now, my friend, as Elias steps down from his watch and begins his journey home, I invite you to do the same. I invite you to let go of your own watch, whatever you have been holding on to, whatever responsibilities and worries you have been carrying. You can set them down now. They will be there tomorrow if you need them. But right now, you don't need to hold anything at all. Imagine the light from the lighthouse sweeping slowly across the dark water. Steady, reliable, calming. Let that rhythm become your breath now. Breathe in as the light sweeps toward you, and breathe out as it passes and fades. Sweep. Pause. Sweep. Pause. The light is still there somewhere, even if you cannot see it now. It is watching over you. It is keeping you safe. There is nothing to fear in the dark, because you are guided. You are cared for. You are not alone. Feel the softness beneath you. Feel how it supports your whole body completely. Feel the warmth of your blanket, the comfort of your pillow. Your body is heavy now. Heavy and warm and perfectly at ease. Every muscle has let go. Every thought has drifted away like a distant cloud. There is only this quiet, this peace, this gentle drifting. The lighthouse keeper's watch has ended. The lamp is off, the sun has risen, and all is well. All is calm. All is exactly as it should be. And so, from my little corner of the world to yours. Good night. Sleep deeply. Sleep well. I'll be here when you wake.